Hey, boys and girls. Just wanted to take a minute to let you know that they have their definitive Lawcast archive on YouTube for you guys to enjoy. Go to youtube.com/user/Cush Reviews or just search on YouTube to find the Lawcast, and all of our episodes past the last 20 or so are going to be there from now on. Get it? Got it? Enjoy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This week, the march to WrestleMania continues as we cover WrestleMania 8. And Cush, I think the question on everyone's mind is this going to be your last podcast?
Well, you know something, Steve. I got so many other interests going on with the movies and the TV and all that stuff, and while I hate to think that this might be my last podcast, there's so many things in my life, so many things business wise and professional wise that have led me to this podcast that I think maybe this is my last podcast.
Well,
God, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan can suck a dick.
I want to say thank you. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for Hulkamania. If you don't know what we're referring to, because it's been lost to history, this WrestleMania 8 was promoted as Hulk Hogan's retirement match.
Yeah, it's weird how they just kind of skipped that over. Like, hey, let's just ignore the fact that Hulk Hogan completely promotes this as his last match ever.
Yeah, it's like that time he was going to run for president of the United States.
I mean, I've been voting for him ever since.
So, God, where are we? It's 1992 and everything is fucked up. The heat's coming down from the feds. Ric Flair's the WWF champion, and they decide not to run Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. And that is the grand mystery of this show. Why didn't they do Hogan versus Flair? What say you, Cush?
Well, there's always been two lines of thought about this. The company line has always been, they tried it at the house shows, it didn't work. They decided, fuck it, we're not doing this. Ric Flair wasn't himself. He had been having confidence issues ever since he came into the company, was having trouble working the WWE style. Vince wasn't a fan. And Hogan didn't want to do the job to him. Flair didn't want to do the job to Hogan. They just couldn't make the match work. That's the company line. To all of that, I say, fuck you, make this match.
Yeah, so here's what I'd say. Okay, the initial Hogan-Flair matches do draw quite well. I think the first one was in Oakland. They did like 14,000 people, which wasn't a sellout, but by 1992, they weren't really selling out on a consistent basis. They did 15,000 at the Garden for it. This match is on YouTube if you want to look it up. It's an awesome match, but it's only 11 minutes long. Flair pins Hogan with a knuck shot, and then they overturn the decision, and Hogan wins by DQ. It's from November of 1991 at Madison Square Garden. Awesome match, crowd's on fire. So I don't really buy into the idea that the matches weren't good, but the first round of house show matches drew really well. When they started to take it around the loop, the second time did not draw well. Third time, even worse. They kind of just burned the match out, which I think may have been the intention.
Well, here's the thing about this match, too. And when we look at this in a nutshell and we say, well, obviously they had to do Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair, the problem is this is not Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. Ric Flair in the NWA in the 80s was absolutely amazing. Top heel, maybe of all time. Hulk Hogan in the WWE during the 80s, probably top babyface of all time. It may seem like a match made in heaven, but the point is, Hulk Hogan in 1992 already wasn't drawing with anybody else either. Hulk Hogan is so stale by this point that people are actively beginning to turn on him.
And he shrunk dramatically.
This steroids thing is going to drive him into hiatus almost immediately after this show for a while. And Ric Flair And we've made this point before. While Ric Flair is a huge name to Southern wrestling fans and to Smarks, WWE fans probably did not have any idea who the fuck he was when he came in, and he hadn't been built amazingly well to this point.
No,
so
it's cool when he shows up with the NWA title belt, but quickly the lawsuit hits and they can't use the belt. So then he's carrying around a tag team title and they're blurring it out on TV. And Gorilla Monsoon's burying the belt and saying it's a Mickey Mouse title. So quickly suck the real world champion gimmick out of it.
This is not like the dream matches later when it's like Steve Austin and Goldberg, where everyone who's a wrestling fan in the United States is equally aware of both of these people. Hulk Hogan is a much bigger star than Ric Flair. That is just simply a fact. Ric Flair does not have a huge following in the northern part of the country or in the western part of the country, really just in the southeast. That's not to say he isn't an absolute god and a legend there, because he is. But the point I'm trying to make is it's not as much of a layup to put these two together in an ultimate dream match and have it draw 90,000 people as people say that it is. It's not. Just because it's a dream match doesn't mean it's a draw.
Yeah. And so I think the real explanation is just Vince thought Hogan versus Sid was a bigger attraction. And I'm going to break the hot take scale and say I don't think that's entirely wrong.
I think it's completely right.
Yeah. I mean, not that this show does gangbusters business, but Sid's hot, and Hogan against a monster is a reliable draw.
Now, we'll get into why that match doesn't work either, and why that storyline is fucked from the start. I think that was the match.
I should also bring up the rumor and innuendo that Sid was promised the main event of WrestleMania against Hogan. That's been sort of a common wrestling urban legend that's how Vince got him to sign. I just don't think Vince makes promises like that. This is a time where they're not even doing guaranteed contracts.
No, he may have given him the impression that, hey, this is where you could go. This is where a lot of our bigger monsters do, is they main event WrestleManias against Hulk Hogan. But no, I guarantee you that he was not guaranteed that.
Yeah. On the other hand, I mean, as we covered with SummerSlam 1991, he's immediately brought in referees that main event and is positioned as Hogan's friend. And I think we all know when Hulk Hogan has a friend, that friend is going to turn on him eventually.
And originally when Hulk Hogan would get a friend, they'd be friends for like a full year. Then the seeds would start to be planted. Then they'd turn on him, and like the following WrestleMania, they'd feud. By this time, this thing turns around in like 3 months.
Nope. It's Sheik Sid.
Oh my God, Sheik Sid. That's the dream.
Yeah. So Vince just decided he wanted to run Hogan and Sid is pretty much the answer. So we kind of covered the convoluted path they took to this show. Undertaker beats Hogan for the WWF title at Survivor Series. Hogan gets a rematch. He wins the title back, but he cheats to win, throws ashes in Taker's eyes and rolls him up. So he's stripped of the title. It's held up. New champion determined at the Royal Rumble. Ric Flair goes 60 minutes to win the title and comes into the show as the WWF champion. What do you think of all that?
The Undertaker thing felt really weird. Did we cover kind of at that time, like, why exactly they had to throw it on him all of a sudden?
I think they just needed... It was... Okay, so they were going to do that Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view. Their theory for how they could draw so big was, we're going to have Hogan drop the title and be challenging to win the title back, a week later, and that'll draw a big number, and it turned out it didn't. But I think it was just a hotshot title change to try to pop that Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view.
Yeah, that was kind of super weird, but I really love what it leads into with the Royal Rumble and Sid and Hogan kind of feuding and not being friends anymore and allowing Flair to win the title. And it leads into this really, really cool press conference where Jack Tunney lines up all of the potential number one contenders who have a reason to have a shot at the belt. So it was like Hogan, Sid, Flair, and Piper all sitting next to
Who
each
were
other.
also the final four guys in the Rumble.
Yes, and he announces who the number one contender is going to be. Now, that's kind of weird because I would kind of prefer that there was some reason to determine which one it would be, but Jack Tunney just pulls a name out of a fucking hat because he's Jack Tunney.
Yeah, so they announce Hogan's getting the title shot. Sid is, of course, furious about this. But on the main event, Hogan and Sid team up against Flair and Undertaker. Sid cuts a promo before the match, kind of disingenuously talking about how much he respects Hulk Hogan and he wishes him the best of luck against Ric Flair at WrestleMania. And then he turns on Hogan, walks out of the match, and then he starts killing jobbers, puts Hogan shirts on their prone bodies, and then he crosses the line and he beats up Brutus Beefcake.
That's the thing. And this is fresh off of his face surgery, Brutus Beefcake, or is that not yet?
Because they're talking about that happened. That was the year before this.
Yeah, so because they're talking about how fragile his face is. Yeah,
could have shattered his face,
which is actually true.
Yeah, he wasn't wearing his protective mask.
Now, let me also point something out here: is that we are unabashed Sid marks on this podcast. We love us some Sid, and if there is a Hall of Fame for killing jobbers, Sid is the first inductee because the way that he's killing jobbers on his way to. He's doing the kind of choke slams that you wish in your dreams that Kane could do. Just like casually lifting people up and spiking them on their necks, like power bombing people into oblivion, beating people with lariats. Like, this is some wild shit, and it looks amazing.
Yeah, these are the kind of beatdowns where these guys are getting a little extra money at the end of the night because they took such an ass whipping.
Sid looked like you could put these exact job matches on today and get someone over as a monster. Like, it's that good.
Yeah, it's we call it the Braun Strowman push, but it's just a reconstituted version of the Sid push.
Exactly. And it never fails. That exact push works every time.
So Hogan gives up his title shot to instead wrestle Sid. This feels like something John Cena would do.
Yes, it does.
Noble stupidity. Except John Cena doesn't have a friend. Didn't he do this?
He did
yes, with Ryback. Yes.
With Ryback. He did this exact thing.
Yes.
Holy shit.
Oh, man. So this causes the number one contender spot to lapse to Randy Savage. Also on that main event show, Randy Savage beat Jake Roberts in a kind of not notable 5-minute match to blow off their super hot feud. We haven't gotten to cover this, but I can't wait until we do. This is the feud where Jake ties Savage up in the ropes, lets his Cobra chew the hell out of his arm. This is the feud where Jake slaps Elizabeth, where he cuts some unbelievable promos, just the height of evil heel Jake Roberts.
Which is kind of a shame because, like, by this point, he's already done. So, like, that's the last great thing he really does in this company.
Yeah. No, you didn't like the coal miner's glove match against Sting at Halloween Havoc?
You know I love that match.
Yeah, that was a great episode of this show. But yeah, like, that clearly seemed like it was heading for a WrestleMania match, and you're thinking maybe it's going to be a retirement match because, you know, the Savage had lost the retirement match to Warrior the previous year. He wins and beats Jake and gets his redemption, and Jake is retired, but they end up not going that way. It feels like maybe there was an audible there.
It feels like this entire show was an audible, honestly.
Yeah, but I feel like it was always going to be Sid against Hogan. I think the audible may have been they decided, like, Undertaker's getting over as a face. Let's turn him face and have him wrestle Jake.
Right.
So as far as other things going on at this time, in the background, we're a few months from the first and only World Bodybuilding Federation pay-per-view, because when you're facing a massive steroid scandal, the best move is to start a bodybuilding company.
This is as good an opportunity as any to remind you guys that I bought that.
You bought the World Bodybuilding Federation pay-per-view?
I'm 95% sure that as a kid I watched that on pay-per-view.
Oh,
I might be misremembering and I watched it on cassette, but I don't even think that that made it to VHS, did it?
I bet there's 10,000 copies of this in Vince's basement.
But like I'm 90%, like I saw it. I have seen this thing as a kid.
I think
So
it
I
did like
have to assume
20,000 buys or something like that.
I think that just like with December to Dismember, I was one of the very few people to buy that show.
Yeah. I mean the idea, this is just one of those. Vince is a mark for bodybuilding. He wanted to try to, we're going to do it. It's going to be quote unquote legitimate, but we're going to have kind of storylines and faces and heels and just the kind of stuff that doesn't work. Whenever I see people try to make real sports like pro wrestling, it flops.
Understand that what bodybuilding really is just a series of people coming out on stage and posing in various ways to show off their particular definition in certain muscular areas. It is not an athletic competition per se, it's a beauty pageant. And so for them to be dressing up like vampires in the Phantom of the Opera and shit and having pretend feuds, in what way does that make sense?
Yeah. So they brought in Lex Luger to do commentary for this.
Ugh.
He's under contract, but they're not having him wrestle at this point. He's just there to do the bodybuilding.
Sure.
I think the plan was probably some synergy that he was both going to do the bodybuilding and wrestle, which I could see working. It's like a really shit version of Brock Lesnar in the UFC.
Well, also, and this has always been sort of like the subtext of this, is that if he's officially an employee of the
Yes.
World Bodybuilding Federation and he gets busted for steroids, well, he's not a wrestler then, is he?
Also like Brock Lesnar in the UFC.
Yep.
And on another note, Hogan had shrunk a lot on this show.
Boy, he sure looks so much skinnier.
Reminds me of a certain tattooed Samoan who's a main eventer at WrestleMania this year.
Yeah, I have no idea who you're talking about.
Yeah, looking awfully skinny these days.
Yeah, he actually is. That's definitely true. Hulk Hogan looks like a person who's like, it's like you vacuum sealed him. Like he looks like he's wearing like a very tan like copy of his body on top. Like he's wearing like a giant Gonzalez muscle suit.
Yeah, he is just a shadow of his former self.
It's gross.
Because they're drug testing, and I think he might actually be off the juice.
And
Not
if you've
everybody is, but
if
some
you've
guys
been
are.
on the juice for 15 years and you come off, your body's not going to be right.
Yeah. So obviously the steroid scandal is ongoing. They're drug testing. Savage is wrestling in a t-shirt and pants now because he is presumably complying with the policy. Ric Flair's not a steroid guy, never a body guy. Sid still looks gigantic and amazing because he just refused to take the drug tests.
Which there's just something that tickles me about that. I know it's hypocritical and bullshit of Sid to be able to say that, but just the balls on the guy to be like, oh, you guys are under steroid investigation with Congress and they're trying to shut you down. Yeah, well, guess what? Fuck your steroid test. I take steroids when I feel like it.
I don't give a damn about your steroid tests. Because
All right.
I rule the world.
He literally rules the world. You do not have jurisdiction with Sid. He is the
No.
ruler of the world.
Of course. And Warrior just took the tests and failed them.
Yeah.
Because he's from
Which
parts
is great.
unknown. You have no jurisdiction over parts unknown.
Like, it's one thing to, like, not take them or to try to hide it like they did with Luger. But for Warrior just to be like, yeah, I'm on roids. Yeah, I'll take your test. Sure. What? I failed? Oh, no.
Yeah. Hogan's done the Arsenio Hall appearance where he tries to play the fake news card and say this is all media distortion, and he claims that he only used steroids 3 times with a doctor's prescription to be treated for injuries. This has already been exposed as a massive lie by this point.
Yep.
It was a very unwise appearance.
Would it have been better just to get in front of this?
Yeah.
And
So
just
here's
be
the
like,
thing. Possession of steroids didn't become illegal at the federal level until 1990. It was legal in the 80s. I don't know about every state's laws, but like it's not until 1990 that it becomes, a federal crime to possess or traffic steroids. So
but
back when if they're using them in the 80s, it was legal.
but does it kill Hogan publicly for him to come out and be like, I took steroids. We kind of all take steroids. It wasn't illegal. We did it because we're showmen and we want to look as best as we can. I'm sorry if I disappointed anybody, but we're all getting off of the now. It's a new era both for the country and for the WWE. We're gonna do blah 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 blah. Does that kill him?
No, it's always the best move to tell the truth and ask for forgiveness because people will give it if they're asked for it. What really makes people mad is when you lie.
Yeah, especially since Hogan was visibly getting off the steroids. So it would have been like, all right, well, he's telling the truth. Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. There's an amazing incident in February where they have a house show in St. Louis. And when the wrestlers get to the arena, the St. Louis Police Department is waiting to search the entire roster for drugs. Luckily, like Blackjack Lanza or somebody had gotten to the arena first, seen the heat, and called back to the hotel to warn everybody to leave their stuff back at the hotel.
How many people would have gone to jail? The whole roster?
Oh my God. I heard when they did the first round of tests, like half the roster failed, and this was with a lot of advance notice that they were going to start testing.
I mean, it wouldn't have just been steroids either. Like, Flair probably had some coke on him. Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been, I mean, it's just that this is the atmosphere, though, that like police departments are just like, yeah, fuck the wrestlers. Let's jack them up.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't want wrestling in this town.
And that's an underrated part of why wrestling goes into these doldrums for so many years. But just like the public perception of wrestling as a thing just turns so heavily to negative here.
Yeah. And they get another black eye when Barry Orton, who is Randy Orton's uncle, claims that Pat Patterson had tried to extort sex from him in exchange for a push. This and other accusations end up forcing Patterson to leave the company for a while. Terry Garvin also leaves the company and is never welcomed back. I gotta say, like, I mean, the total weight of these accusations strike me as fairly credible.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily all of them seem particularly credible, and the idea that Pat Patterson was promising pushes in exchange for sex is the kind of thing that they've always kind of suggested about higher up people, and that doesn't necessarily always happen. But clearly, some sexual harassment stuff at the very least was going on at the higher levels of WWE.
Yeah, and like, I don't think anybody dismisses the idea that this has happened with female talent.
Oh God, no.
This probably
it absolutely
for a
did.
while happened with every single female talent.
Shawn Laurinaitis. Oh, I'm sorry. How did that come out?
Yeah. And one more. Vince is accused of rape by Rita Chatterton, who was the one and only female referee for the company in the 1980s.
And this just kind of escapes the public
went away.
Vince McMahon.
Just like that tanning salon incident just kind of went away.
Vince has, gosh, I hesitate to slander anybody on the air, but Vince has for sure raped somebody. So just something to remember about his legacy.
It's amazing they couldn't put Vince McMahon in prison, isn't it?
I mean, he's literally like dodging like from one thing to the other. Like, oh, there's some rape over here. Oh, all your wrestlers are on drugs. Oh, steroids are illegal and we know you're doing them. Like, whoa.
When they announced the charges against him, I feel like everyone's reaction was, wait, that's it? That's all you've got on him?
Well, that's
seriously?
The thing. The funny thing about all of this is that they really needed somebody within the company to flip on Vince, which is how it usually works. Unfortunately, there were only probably 4 or 5 people in the world who could have credibly flipped on Vince. And funnily enough, one of them's probably Bruce Pritchard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Pritchard, Patterson, I mean,
Was
yeah, it was not a
JJ
big
there?
inner circle back then. No, I don't think JJ's there quite yet.
Yeah. But like Vince kept all the other people in his company at arm's length from his personal life and like his dealings along those lines. So if a person member of the McMahon family or Pat or Bruce don't flip on him, I genuinely don't know who could have. So they just didn't have enough information.
Yeah, I mean, just on the whole, it's just one thing. I mean, one thing after another. They're just getting destroyed. I mean, you're getting mainstream press attention on pro wrestling. Geraldo Rivera's tabloid show is running episodes. Donahue. There's a surreal Larry King episode where he interviews. He has like a debate between Bruno Sammartino and Vince McMahon, and like Vince completely outworks Bruno because Vince is a much better promo, but it's just Vince being slippery as possible about all this.
And it's just, it has been proven time and time again that wrestling companies can weather basically any controversy that comes along as long as they're hot. But this is a stale company. They have no momentum. Business is going in the toilet, and all this controversy is piling up. So it's very easy to see how the company could easily have folded in the next couple of years.
Yeah. So as they're looking for the spark, they decide to pull a stunt and start promoting this is Hogan's retirement match. On the March to WrestleMania special, the week before WrestleMania, they do what I think is actually a very good like sit-down interview with Vince and Hogan, where Hogan's out of character. He's really being kind of Terry Bollea rather than Hulk Hogan, and being very soft-spoken about, reflecting on his career. And I thought this was great, and I think this is a presentation they should have done more of.
I mean, I agree with you that this was kind of great, and it was kind of a work shoot in an era where that absolutely was not happening whatsoever in any way. My only problem with it is that they basically entirely bury the actual match. Like having this be like Hogan's retirement match and that just being kind of forced on the way to WrestleMania is one thing. But like in the interview, Hogan is just kind of like, oh yeah, Sid, whatever. Because this is Terry Bollea, and Terry Bollea knows that's a fake wrestling match and who cares. And it just always it comes off as so it doesn't matter what happens in this match because it's my last match. And it just buries Sid.
Yeah, whereas he should be worrying about how is he going to survive in the ring against this animal, Sid Justice.
Right. If this is going to be a retirement thing, they could have made it a retirement thing, but that's not what happens. And if he's going to leave and go on hiatus after that, and he knows that he does, why doesn't he lose this match?
Because Hulkster doesn't do jobs, brother.
Hulk's got to pose.
Yeah, I mean, the show ends up doing pretty mediocre business. They draw 60,000 people, but it's about 48,000 paid. They gave away tons and tons of tickets to make the crowd. I mean, they basically fill the dome, but it's with 15,000 comps. The gate is only a bit over $1 million, which is really tiny for a show with 60,000 people there.
Yep.
They do a 2.3 buy rate, 390,000 buys. That's only down 10,000 buys from the year before, but that buy number the year before was considered a disaster at the time.
Yeah, and they're promoting this as Hogan's retirement match, and they think Sid's the huge star, and like all of their stars are loaded onto this show in big matches, and it does not draw.
Yeah. Winter has arrived by 1992. Despite, I think this is a great year creatively, but the business just isn't there.
Exactly.
And it's an interesting paradox that they, despite having more talent on their roster than they had throughout the 80s, they're just not drawing. Kind of similar to the situation they found themselves in like 2002, 2003, when they had more stars than they could possibly imagine, but somehow they couldn't, hit the business they had been doing the couple years before.
And similar to that time, eventually you have to come to a period where like your old stars are done and you got to push the new guys, and business is going to suffer while you do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just naturally going to happen. It's not an easy transition. It never is.
No, 1993, 1994, 1995 are really rough years.
But eventually that will all lead to the most magical 3-year period in wrestling history.
Exactly. It was either that or the company was going to go out of business entirely.
Hit or
So,
miss.
getting to the show, it's Sunday, April 5th, 1992, a matinee at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana. The only time that Indianapolis would host WrestleMania. Why do you think they've never gone back there?
Because Indianapolis is a fucking dump.
I mean, the thing
I'm
is,
s-
Indianapolis hosts the Final Four like every 3 years.
yeah, but it's a basketball town. Like it's
Yeah.
Indianapolis and Indiana, and especially have always been basketball places. Here's the thing: is they want to, especially now. You could never run it now because WrestleMania is so big, and it would just be. It's not a tourist destination, and that's a consideration these days. But even in the '90s, it's just like this is not a great venue. It doesn't look amazing. I mean, it draws well, but it doesn't draw amazingly well. It's not a hotbed for wrestling, and it doesn't easily draw from other hotbeds around, like say a Detroit does.
Yeah. Yeah. On commentary, we've got Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan at the absolute peak of their powers. I thought they were amazing.
They were amazing. I will say, right off the top, that this show may have more racist comments from the commentary team per capita than any other wrestling show that has ever existed, to the point where, like, I kind of just started looking at the screen like, Bobby, no, no.
Man, Heenan could be super racist.
The comments he starts coming out with about Liz at a certain point are just like, dude, come on, come on.
In the dark match, the Bushwhackers defeated the Beverly Brothers in 10 minutes.
Shame we didn't get to see that.
Yeah, were you going to say something before I rudely interrupted you?
Oh, no, not at all. I was just gonna compliment them and say that it was still great commentary. Don't get me wrong. It was just you need to know that up front.
Yeah, I'll be referencing plenty of the lines
Yes.
during the recap. First, we have Reba McEntire out to perform the Star Spangled Banner, which is very strange because, as we've commented on, it's usually America the Beautiful. No idea what the change was here.
I think that she pretty. I want to say that she had done the Indianapolis 500 that same year, and I don't know if maybe that was why. And I think it was like kind of a pretty famous thing. I can be completely misremembering that. So if you do know that I'm misremembering that, please hit us up on Twitter and yell at me for lying about that. But I seem to remember that from my childhood. But yeah, her and her 6 feet of hair do a pretty good job at the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah, Heenan says this is Tito Santana's sister, Reba McEntire.
That's pretty fucking good.
Opening match, Tito Santana against Shawn Michaels, a big star from the 80s against the star of the 90s. It's a running theme we'll see on tonight's show. Shawn is a few months removed from throwing Marty Jannetty through the barbershop window. This was going to be Michaels versus Jannetty, but Marty had an unfortunate cop punching incident that led to him getting fired.
And you know those cop punching incidents. We all go through them.
Yeah. Fun fact, Marty versus Shawn was also supposed to happen at WrestleMania 9, but Marty got fired again.
We would eventually get it on Monday Night Raw, and
That
thank
was
God
an
we
awesome
actually.
match.
It was an awesome match. It just would have been more awesome at WrestleMania, Marty.
Yeah, but Marty Jannetty was a fuck up.
Yeah, he sure was.
But
that clears the way for this, which is not an awesome match, but not a horrible one.
No, it's pretty good. I mean, my initial note, the setup, we've got the awesome neon entrance way, which I've always loved.
Yes.
Yeah,
so good.
Sadly, the only time we would see that at WrestleMania.
I've always wanted to have that be like my front door.
You can tell they have not jammed the seats in on the floor. You can also see empty seats when they pan wide. Not very many. And it's actually, I think it was just like a late arriving crowd because by the end of the first match, it's filled in.
Right. It does feel a little weird and empty because like in previous WrestleManias, maybe it's just the venues that they had, but like there's people pressed in so hard that like wrestlers are dodging hands on their way to the ring. Whereas here they have like a full runway to get there.
Yeah. They're just not packing them in here. Just not the
Right.
same demand for tickets. Um, Tito goes through a bunch of headlocks. Gorilla says you'll never beat anyone with that. Heenan claims that he won a few matches with it.
And the incredulity in Gorilla Monsoon's voice when he says "you" is one of my favorite moments of the entire night.
I love that Bobby Heenan actually was a wrestler, but his character is that he wasn't.
Yes, exactly.
Like, there's never an acknowledgement that Bobby Heenan was an actual. Whereas, like, Jesse Ventura was always acknowledged to have been a wrestler. Bobby Heenan clearly was not.
No, he's the guy who gets his ass kicked in the ring. That's his whole character.
Yeah. Shawn finally gets the advantage, throwing Tito over the top to the floor. We get a backbreaker from Shawn. Heenan says that Sherry's looking good tonight. Gorilla says he needs to see his oculist. Heenan replies that there's nothing wrong with his feet.
See, this is the kind of thing where like they have chemistry together like no commentators I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Where like they didn't script any of this stuff. Like Gorilla just feeds in for lines, and Heenan can just deliver a one-liner out of his back pocket at genuinely any moment. Like that's a skill that I can't think of anyone who's ever replicated in the business.
Yeah, I think Bobby Heenan could have absolutely had a career in stand-up comedy if he hadn't been a commentator and manager.
Oh God, yes. But he, for the record, Heenan is right. Sherry's looking good.
As always, are you a fan of the Shawn Sherry pairing?
I actually really love the way that storyline came to be too. Kind of like hot on the heels of the Macho King thing failing, her becoming smitten with this like young up and comer guy, and she's in love with him, and he's just using her. Like that's great heat, and she is like so great as like just as an obsessed older woman lusting after a younger man.
I also love the reality of it that if somebody was working stiff with Shawn, she'd tell him to throw them outside and she'd beat them up for him.
That's so great. And while I think like Bruce denied that on their podcast, I completely fucking believe that.
Oh yeah. Like I can believe Sherry and stiff guys.
Sherry was getting over on guys on like TV in an era where women were barely even existing. Like I fully believe that Sherry could hold her own with anybody.
Yeah. Shawn goes for the teardrop back suplex. Tito flips out of it, counters with the flying forearm, but it knocks Shawn down to the floor so he can't get the pin. Tito hits another flying forearm. Shawn rolls out of the ring again. Shawn gets to the apron. Tito tries to suplex him into the ring, but Sherry trips him. Shawn comes down on top and gets the 1, 2, 3. Really solid opening match.
Absolutely. It was great. Tito is really good at this stuff, and I don't think that we've ever really commented on what a work of art his flying forearm is.
Yeah.
Like it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I can't even understand
awesome.
I don't understand the physics of it. Like he bounces off the ropes and then flies 20 feet across the ring. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Final televised WrestleMania match for Tito Santana. He would wrestle Papa Shango in the dark match the year after this at WrestleMania 9.
Thereby breaking the streak because he had what, 9 in a row?
Yeah, eight in
a row.
Yeah, he wrestled at every WrestleMania to this point. And I think he'd only won one match.
Poor Tito. Is there any reason why he was the matador here?
Just like, oh, let's give him a new gimmick. Let's make him a bullfighter.
It's just so weird to take a guy who's like 38 and at the end of his career and be like, hey, time for a new gimmick, brother.
Yeah. I think it was like after his WrestleMania loss the previous year, they did this storyline where he, in shame, went back to his homeland and rediscovered his roots. One of those.
Got it.
Heenan puts over Shawn. He says he's going to be the world champion and the star of the 90s. I thought that was awesome.
And he's right, because that's true. And basically from this point on, us covering WrestleMania is basically going to be us progressively covering Shawn Michaels, because this is his show. And until 14 goes off the air, this is his WrestleMania thing. Yeah, and it's just going to be his growth and then his departure.
Absolutely. Then we get a very strange segment. Mean Gene is on the stage for an interview with the Legion of Doom, and they introduce the debuting Paul Ellering, their classic manager, a guy I'm a big fan of who had not been with them so far. So basically the storyline is the Legion of Doom sucks, but now that Paul Ellering is there, they're going to be good again. Just like, we've been a runaway train, and now we've got a conductor, I think is a line that Animal literally says.
Paul Ellering cuts a promo here that I do not understand a word of. He says a lot of stuff about like honor and how like they haven't been fighting correctly, but now we're going to fight with honor. And like I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. To be fair, I'm not sure I've ever heard a Paul Ellering promo and thought, man, that was a great promo. Good job, Paul.
I thought it was a good presentation, the three of them, but yeah, I mean, for some reason, the Road Warriors just never felt right in the WWF.
A good fit, and like that's one of those things where it's the same reason Goldberg never quite felt right in WWE. Is you have to watch somebody progress along those lines to really enjoy them when they become a main eventer. Like you have to watch the job matches and see them get over and be impressed by them. They can't just come in as killers and then not kill anybody and you just accept them that way. That's always been kind of a problem, and it's a big problem with what they do with NXT now, where if all your character progression was in another place that people didn't see, it's hard to accept you as that character now.
Yeah. So this will prove to be the final WrestleMania appearance for the Legion of Doom in this run. They leave the company after SummerSlam. I'll be saying final appearance a lot tonight. Almost everybody is gone after this show.
Supposed to be in the tag title match here? Because I thought, wasn't like Animal or somebody suspended?
I don't know if it was that, but yeah, they were the tag champions, and then they lost the belts to Money Inc., and Money Inc. ended up in a nothing match against the Natural Disasters instead. And no, something weird's happened here, because the Natural Disasters had also very abruptly turned face, because they were heels back at the Rumble.
They were such good heels.
Yeah. So next match, we've got Jake the Snake Roberts against The Undertaker. So the story here was they had been kind of evil partners in crime. They had teamed up to disrupt Macho Man and Liz's wedding reception. But Jake took things too far when he was going to hit Liz with a chair, and Undertaker stopped him, leading to the classic line where Jake asked Undertaker, "Whose side are you on?" And he responds, "Not yours." Then we got the great segment on the funeral parlor where Jake slammed Taker's hand in the casket, immobilized him, and then DDT'd Paul Bear on the floor.
That's a genuinely genius segment. Where like he literally traps Undertaker, and Undertaker's acting like a robot who doesn't understand how his hand works. While like literally Jake just beats the shit out of Paul Bear, beats the shit out of Taker, destroys the set. Just great stuff from Jake.
Let's put over Jake as, even if he's not, a physical threat to The Undertaker, he's an intellectual threat.
Right.
So the backstory here, this is Jake's last match in the WWF until 1996. He had wanted to take over Pat Patterson's job in creative. He was lobbying Vince for that. Vince told him, no, we're not going to hire anybody for Pat's spot right now. Jake was furious. He had wanted to transition to a backstage role. So before this match, he demands his release and tells Vince if he won't give it to him, he won't do the match. So Vince agrees to let him go. Jake ends up leaving for WCW, and that's the one-match run we covered with Halloween Havoc 1992.
Which winds up doing major business, because this is the kind of thing that didn't happen at the time and created a very real dream match between him and Sting.
Yeah, rare case of somebody going from a big star going from the WWF to WCW in that era.
Yeah. Now, do we know if he was like super into the drugs at this point, or was it after that all goes to hell that it gets really bad?
I'm thinking he was probably into him by this point.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if he had gotten to be part of creative, how might Jake's story be different at this point? But I think at this point was not really the time to have somebody like Jake as part of your backstage crowd, you know?
Yeah. Questionable.
Yeah.
So this is not much of a match. And Jake hits some jabs. Taker does some chokes. Gorilla Smell says there's always a smell of formaldehyde in the air when Undertaker is around. Heenan responds that he thought that was Gorilla's cologne.
Ha.
Gorilla threatens to have Heenan thrown out. Heenan responds that he's Indiana's favorite Bobby. Takes a shot at the Indiana Hoosiers basketball team for losing the night before. That was to Duke in the 1992 Final Four. So Heenan's really healing on Indiana there.
That's a very famous game, too, and they were really salty about it.
Jake hits a DDT out of nowhere. Taker sits up. Short arm clothesline. Taker sits up. Another DDT from Jake. He doesn't cover. He goes to mess with Paul Bear instead. Taker sits up, goes out to the floor, tombstones Jake on the floor, rolls him back into the ring for the pin. You know, nothing special, 5 minutes, but puts Taker over strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's really not important, except as a footnote in the Undertaker's overall streak, that it's just kind of a thing that happened. It is, but it's underrated work by Jake. It really is. Like, he makes, at this point, it's hard to make a match with Taker because he's just not able to sell anything. Like, he's not having matches. He's just mercilessly destroying people. So it's a pretty good testament to him that he gets something out of this.
Yeah. Then we go backstage and we get a great interview with Mean Gene and Piper and Brett. I think they do a great job of setting up the story of their match here. You know, it's a respect match, but there's some bad blood here. Piper doesn't like that the young guys are trying to take his spot. So Piper, you know, is trying to be nice, but he's being condescending. He's talking about knowing Brett since he was a little kid, but then he's talking about how he wasn't, you know, potty trained until he was 7, about how he always beat him up when he was a kid, and Brett, you know, isn't having any of this. Brett is serious, ready to take his title back, and Piper, you know, kind of freaks out.
And then, like, this awesome moment happens. Like, Piper goes to leave. Brett grabs him, is like, I would have punched you in the face. I would have had you. And then Piper shows, like, a belt wrapped around his fist. It's like, no, you wouldn't have. And, like, it's such a great serious moment from Piper. And he's never serious. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely sets the tone for their match, the story of their match. And next up, we've got it for the Intercontinental title. Roddy Piper defends against Bret Hart. As you should remember, Piper won the title from the Mountie at the Rumble 92. That was after the Mountie had beaten Bret when Bret wrestled against doctor's orders with a fever. So now Bret gets a shot at the title he was unjustly defeated for. And the fascinating thing about this match is that we actually get to see Roddy Piper wrestle instead of brawl.
Yes. And I think, man, we covered a lot of shows from this era and from the 80s. Is this the only really wrestling match we've seen him in?
Yeah. All of his other matches are brawls, but here, yeah, they're locking up, they're doing headlocks and arm drags and takeovers, they're doing all kinds of technical stuff, and it's a really cool, slow build where just you can tell the tension is up and things are going to get out of control. But yeah, they start with a scientific match and they build from there.
God, this is probably... God, I don't want to make any kind of sweeping declaration here, but this is one of my favorite Intercontinental Championship matches of all time. And this is really the moment where Bret Hart arrives as a single star. And we've been making so many references to the fact that Roddy Piper doesn't put people over, never loses, never does anything even slightly to look vulnerable at any moment, just refuses to. I wonder if it's just loyalty to the Hart family, or that he feels like it's finally time to make a star. I don't know what it is.
For Bret.
Yeah, but Piper puts Bret over in a way that nobody else on this show does with anybody else.
Yeah, like not only does Bret beat him, but this match clearly shows that Bret is the superior wrestler.
Yes. Like Piper's trying Brett at Brett's game, and Brett soundly defeats him at it.
Yeah. Early in the match, Brett hits a drop kick, but he comes down on his shoulder and hurts it. Piper goes to pick him up, and it turns out Brett was playing possum and rolls him into a small package. Piper kicks out, but he's pissed. He slaps Brett across the face. This is where Heenan starts talking about how he was champion. Gorilla goes, of what? Heenan goes, the neighborhood.
Oh my God. Bobby Heenan, we'll just keep repeating this over and over, but Bobby Heenan is so great at this little stuff of spinning it out. And Gorilla is so great at giving him shit over it. And then Gorilla's like, the only gold you have is in your teeth.
There is no gold in my teeth. Brett hits a crossbody and both guys go over the top rope. Brett gets back in the ring. He goes to tie his boot and Piper hits him with a sucker punch and now shit's on. Brett blades, which was a big no-no at the time, but he didn't get caught, unlike Ric Flair later in the show. And when Vince asked him about it, he just said it was hard way and Vince let it go.
I mean, it obviously is not hard way.
No. What the fuck did he get busted open by?
Yeah. And it's kind of weird for him to blade because he's got so much hair in his face that most of the match you can't even really tell that there's a lot of blood there. But, I mean, it's still a great touch for this match, and I'm not surprised at all that Vince let it go because it's sort of like a first offender thing. Later on when Flair does it, I mean, that's what Flair does, and he does it right on camera.
Flair does it, like literally you watch him do it.
He just like walks towards the camera as he slices his head with the razor.
Head. Yeah. This is one of those things that when Brett and Flair were, feuding and shoot interviews, this was something Brett gave him a lot of shit for, that he couldn't even blade properly.
Oh, damn.
Bret Hart's the real blading king.
Bret Hart is the real shade king, is what he is.
Piper hits a bulldog, and then he bites Bret's forehead. Somehow, STDs do not exist in wrestling.
Had to say, ugh.
Fuck. What?
Yeah.
And I think everybody knew Bret was getting around on the road, if you've read his book.
I had to say, that's literally, to do that today, it would be like the most insanely dangerous thing you could possibly do. Like, oh my God, are you not worried about hepatitis? Imagine doing that to Bob Orton. Fuck.
Yeah. Bret comes back with a sunset flip. Piper again kicks out, and he's still pissed off. He's hitting rights and lefts. Bret hits a shoulder block, and then they both hit a clothesline at the same time. Piper goes up to the top rope, but Bret pops up, slams him face first into the mat. This was brutal. This wasn't a Flair slam where he comes down on his back. He went down head first here.
Yeah, and it looked great. At this point, they're stiffing each other. It's awesome.
Yeah. Bret hits an inverted atomic drop, then a snap suplex. Bret goes for the sharpshooter, but Piper blocks it. Bret goes for the front elbow, but Piper gets his foot up, just blasts him in the face. This looked rough.
I think, honestly, at this point, I can't tell if this is one of those matches where Piper's like, I'm laying it in, so you better send it too. But everything Piper's doing looks like it's hitting him hard.
It's a shooting work match.
Yeah. If Piper's going to job to you, it's going to look like he gave his best fight.
Yeah. Bret gets Piper in a headlock. Piper throws him into the ref. Ref's down. Piper slams Bret into the steps, throws him back in the ring. Piper goes and gets the ring bell, and this is such a great moment. He just agonizes over whether or not to use the bell. Do you remember the Sami Zayn Neville NXT title match where Zayn finally won the title?
Yes.
They did the exact same moment in there, and it was great that time, too.
I mean, it's just such a great moment, especially for, Piper's not a heel here. He's still very much a babyface, but he has been acting super heelish with Bret here. But, he still has that underlying love and respect for Bret and his family, and even though he's mad, he just can't quite bring himself to go full heel like he used to, and that's what loses him the match.
And doesn't he want to prove that he's the better wrestler and not just a cheater?
Hasn't that always been the thing that surrounded him? This is his first championship that he's ever had in WWE. Doesn't he want to defend it for real?
Yeah. He can't bring himself to do it. Heenan is very upset by this.
Oh, Heenan would never understand. Like, what do you mean? Did you
Uh,
drop it? Pick it back up.
Brett instead, or Piper instead locks on the sleeper, and we get the classic finish. Brett runs up the turnbuckle, pushes off with his feet, manages to turn himself over in midair and land in a bridge pin. Because of the way the sleeper is locked on, there is no way Piper can kick out of this. I love this finish.
It's so great that he would later reuse it with Austin at their Survivor Series match. And it's exactly as brilliant there.
Has there ever been a better finish man in pro wrestling than Bret Hart?
No. And like one of the good things about that is that he was not afraid to get good finishes from other places. Like he famously like asked Jericho like, "Hey, what's a good small package variant to do in my pay-per-view match tonight?" And like he would just get it pull from all these different sources, which is a thing that guys didn't really do at that time. Like people weren't big tape watchers at the time, and Hart was kind of one of the first of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's another thing you pick up in his book, but like he would get an idea and he would just sit on it. He'd like write it down in a notebook. And when he would have a big match, he would look through the notebook for ideas rather than get a good idea and be like, okay, we'll do that, tonight in our house show match in Tulsa. He'd wait for a moment where it actually made sense to use something.
In that way, he was kind of the opposite of Shawn Michaels because Bret Hart would famously have the Bret Hart match when it wasn't a real match, which is the exact same match no matter who he was wrestling all the times. Like he was the original 5 Moves of Doom. Like, which is funny because we remember him as such a great worker. But like he was really one of those guys who, when it was a big match, that's when you'd get the greatness. And otherwise, it was just kind of whatever.
And somehow he would rip Ric Flair for having the same match every time.
He and Ric Flair are the same guy. All right?
Yes, it's another of those. It's like Vince McMahon and Bob Costas.
Yeah. Like Ric Flair.
Bret Hart is just a Canadian version of Ric Flair.
Ric Flair and Bret Hart are both super promiscuous dudes who are obsessed with themselves and super narcissistic and are great wrestlers and they're stars of their federation. It's the same guy, okay?
So of course they hate each other.
Of course they do.
We get an interview now with Lex Luger, who was recently signed with the World Bodybuilding Federation. He's a total heel. He talks about what a great commentator Heenan is and calls Monsoon a fat ass. And then he has a butler bring him a glass of milk, which was delightfully heelish.
This is such a great segment. Lex Luger is sitting in a chair, and Lex Luger is gigantic. Lex Luger looks like he
looks so good.
He's auditioning for the Incredible Hulk here. Like he does not fit in this chair, and it's a big chair. And the part where he's just like, excuse me, guys, I'm a little thirsty. And the butler brings him a glass of milk, and he just drinks it. Like that doesn't lead anywhere. He just drinks a glass of milk on the air.
Yeah, this does not feel like a 1991 wrestling promo. It's so self-aware and ironic.
Yes. And like the whole concept of the narcissist that would later come, like they didn't really understand what they were doing with that, but like Lex Luger was kind of giving it his all and making it work.
If they had not done the Lex Express, I think he would have had a great heel run.
He was such a great heel. And we can talk later about we've been doing this for, God, I don't know, like 30 episodes now. And I think in at least 20 of those, I've mentioned that one day we will cover Lex Luger's heel turn on Tatanka. But we will. But Lex Luger was actually good sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Very occasionally.
Sometimes. Very occasionally.
Next up, we have a totally pointless match. It's the Big Boss Man, Sergeant Slaughter, Virgil, and Jim Duggan against the Nasty Boys, Repo Man, and the Mountie. The only real highlight here is I thought Ray Combs had a few decent lines introducing the heels and making fun of them.
It was pretty weird. Like when they first announced that he was the ring announcer, I was like, all right, that's a little odd. Why? Because he's not really a celebrity. He's just the host of Family Feud. And he keeps like saying like, And we're going to go to the survey. That's not how the survey on Family Feud works. They don't just ask the crowd for, hey, what kind of insult would you like to make about Sergeant Slaughter? Like, what? No.
Yeah. Is this the only celebrity they had tonight?
I think it is.
Yeah,
Which that's how
nobody
far
wanted to
we've
be
fallen,
associated
guys.
with this dog shit product at this point.
No, God, no.
The only highlight of this match is Heenan announcing that Shawn Michaels has left the building.
Which is great. I love that.
What happens here? Duggan clothesline sags to the floor, and Virgil gets the pin on Knobs. I just want to comment that the year before this, Sergeant Slaughter was the world champion and in the main event, and now he's in this match.
And he's literally the least memorable part of this match, in a very not memorable match.
He's back to being an American sympathizer.
He's literally has equal billing with Repo Man. That's where we are.
Sergeant Slaughter's final WrestleMania match. Also, last one for Big Boss Man in this run. Last one for Virgil. Last one for Jim Duggan. Last one for the Nasty Boy. Everybody's getting cleared out of here.
Yep, it's a whole new generation, and the only one who's going to survive is Repo Man.
Yeah. We get an interview with Ric Flair. He promises to reveal his pictures of Elizabeth where she's wearing nothing but the staples in the centerfold.
This is a good promo. It is. I don't like this storyline, and I especially didn't like it the second time when they did the exact same storyline in WCW for some reason. Except
I thought the WCW version of it was great.
Yeah, well, yeah, but like it was weird that they basically repeated it, except they did have Elizabeth turn heel.
Yeah, they had the balls to actually turn Elizabeth.
Right, which was great. At that point, it was great. But here, it's just kind of empty. Like, you're the champion, and it's just like, yeah, I got naked pictures of your girl, har 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 har. But like, it's obviously not true. It's obviously not true, and they just keep harping on it, and it's very weird. And Mr. Perfect is a bad promo.
Yeah. You didn't buy that Nate would have had Elizabeth back when she was good?
I mean, Nate had a lot of people, so, I mean, it's not impossible. But the way that they had portrayed Elizabeth to this point, it's just not feasible that that's a thing. You know what I mean? It's almost not even feasible that Savage has seen her naked.
Probably not. They probably sleep in different rooms.
But that's the level of purity that they've attached to Elizabeth at this point. So not so much me being affronted with Ric Flair for having the gall to treat her that way, but it's just like, guys, stop it. Stop using Elizabeth like this. It's mean.
It is a much more mature storyline that it's like, yeah, Flair banged Elizabeth because like they hadn't gone there before.
No, not at all. Like, they had barely touched on the idea of somebody lusting after Elizabeth with Hogan. Yeah. And then, like, never again after that.
So next up, we've got Ric Flair defending the World Wrestling Federation Championship against Randy Savage. Flair is backed up by his executive consultant, Mr. Perfect. Of course, Heenan on commentary is going crazy cheerleading for Flair. Savage runs to the ring to go after Flair. Flair bails out. No Elizabeth with him at the start of this match. Savage is just on fire. He's beating the shit out of Flair. Perfect interferes, pulls him off. Can't stop Savage. He hits a clothesline, a knee to the back. He's biting Flair. Savage delivers a 10 punch, but that gets countered with an inverted atomic drop. Savage blocks it and hits Flair with a clothesline, then the back elbow. He's just
I don't think I've ever seen Savage get this much offense in a match in his entire career.
Yeah.
And it's weird because usually he's the guy who's doing the bumping and feeding. But like Ric Flair is that guy. So basically what they're doing here is a Southern style wrestling match. And it's just really weird to see one of those on WrestleMania, you know?
This is one of the few Ric Flair matches in this WWF run where I feel like he's really on his game. Like, Savage seemed to be one of the only guys who could work his match with him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Ric Flair match. This is
Yeah.
Ric Flair cheating, Ric Flair using all the outside interference, Ric Flair like controlling the tempo, calling the
Working the
match.
knee.
This feels fully out of NWA era Ric Flair. Absolutely. This could absolutely be one of those matches. And it's a complete breath of fresh air with everything else on the card because nobody else wrestles like this.
Yeah. Savage charges Flair. He gets backdropped over the top rope to the floor, and now Flair's in control. He hits a big vertical suplex, a knee drop, slams Savage into the ring apron. He suplexes him from the apron into the ring. Savage gets a few right hands and a swinging neck breaker, but Flair rakes his eyes. Flair goes to the top rope. He gets thrown off. Flair gets thrown into the turnbuckle, does the Flair flip over the top rope, runs to the opposite corner, comes off the top rope, but gets clotheslined for a really close 2 count. Crowd is on fire for this match.
Yeah, it must be said that while everybody lauds this as a great match, and we were talking earlier about how kind of stupid it was, the circumstances that led Savage to getting the #1 contendership. Savage is wild over here, and the fans are very offended on his behalf about what's happening with Elizabeth, and Flair has real heat. But I think more than Flair having heat, Savage is just beloved.
Yeah. Flair gets thrown to the floor. Savage hits him with the double axe handle off the top rope. It's here where Flair blades right on camera.
It's so bad.
Bother to try to hide it.
And it's not off of like a super obvious spot for that.
No.
He just blades because this is the point in the match where we blade.
Yeah, Vince fined him for this.
I would have too, just for being an idiot.
Yeah, even if blading were allowed, you're not allowed to blade on camera.
Oh God, this is obvious. Like this would have been like total botchamania if that had been around at that time.
How high is this rate on the unnecessary blade job scale? This is like a Shawn Michaels circa 2003.
Oh God, when he was blading in every match, like, oh, I caught a clothesline, time to blade.
Yep. Savage hits another axe handle for a close 2 count. Then he hits the flying elbow, gets the 1, 2, Perfect pulls him off. Savage chases Perfect around the ring. Perfect rolls into the ring, gives brass knuckles to Flair. Flair knocks Savage out with the knucks for a really close 2 count. I thought that was a brilliant sequence.
Oh, it was amazing. And the crowd at this point is nuclear. Like, this is easily the hottest that they are all night. It's not even close.
Yeah. I mean, this is another of those Savage matches that really benefits from laying the whole thing out in advance because they're doing much more intricate spots than you're used to seeing.
Right.
This is where Elizabeth starts to come down the aisle, and we get the WrestleMania debut of Shane McMahon as he tries to stop her.
Can you explain to me why they're trying so hard? Like, there's like 6 guys.
I know.
And they're all trying to prevent her from being at ringside.
She's a licensed valet. She has every right to be down at ringside.
They're treating it like she's going to be like fired if she lays a hand on Rick, or like she's been like has a restraining order by Randy or something. It's like that. We're like, it feels like there's a part of the story that we're missing. Like she's been banned from ringside and she's going to ruin the match for Randy. And all she's doing is just like tapping on the apron like, come on, Randy, let's go. While Shane actively tries to shove her out of the way.
Yeah. We get a long sequence of Flair working Savage's leg. He really, really works the heat.
The knee breakers that he does are some of the coolest looking things I've ever seen. Like lifting him up over his head, like, and then like power bombing him down on the knee. Like that's such a vicious looking move.
Yeah. Uses that as the setup to the figure 4, locks it in. Savage is able to turn it over, and Perfect helps Flair make the ropes. We get a small package from Savage for 2. He can barely stand up, but he manages to catch Flair with a schoolboy out of nowhere, grabs the trunks, and gets the 1, 2, 3 new champion. Amazing match.
If this had been the blow off to this feud, this is an all-time classic match. Like, so good. It's very weird that this is not at all the blow off to this feud.
No.
And they immediately continue it. But it is every bit as good as people say it is. Now, as I said on the last one, we're kind of trying to find the best WrestleMania match of all time as we go through these. And some people have suggested that this is it. I still think that Savage Warrior is better.
It is more emotional.
Yeah. So I'm still holding that up as the best match in WrestleMania history to this point. And we'll see as we go on. But I just wanted to keep you guys updated on that.
Yeah. I think it was a huge mistake that Savage won the title here.
Huge
mistake. I think that was insane. They blew all the heat off.
Like if Flair wins here, especially if he wins in a shitty way, or if he gets his hands on Liz and that's what leads to the win, so much heat, right?
Yeah. Yeah, imagine the house show chase with Savage trying to get his revenge and win the belt. Instead, it's Savage or Flair chasing Savage, and it didn't draw at all.
Because why would it? That's not how you do wrestling storylines.
No. And then they end up panicking and taking the belt off Savage and putting it back on Flair, and it all fell apart.
So stupid. Like, just so many mistakes being made left and right here. It really, like, this whole show, and especially the next year of booking after it, really feel like they're booked by someone who's distracted, which of course Vince was.
Yeah, because Vince is facing, doing time in federal prison.
And he doesn't have Pat. Like, it's just Vince and Bruce.
And Jerry Jarrett.
And, oh my God. And Jerry Jarrett.
They brought Jerry Jarrett in to run the company if Vince went to prison.
That's so fucking shit. Like, can you imagine how garbage this company would have been under the tiller of Jerry fucking Jarrett?
Yeah, that would have been terrible.
Jarrett would have been...
Vince would have been trying to run the company from prison.
Just like the true mob boss that he is.
They would have been making a lot of trips to go see Vince in prison.
We would have seen a news story about Vince attempting to break out of prison on the day that Jeff Jarrett pinned Hulk Hogan to win the title.
Is there any question that if Vince had gone to prison, Nails would have been his cellmate?
Fucking Nails.
In the post-match, Flair tries to kiss Elizabeth, but she slaps him. All the agents separate Flair and Savage. We get a huge celebration with fireworks. This really feels like it should be the end of the show.
This is the second year in a row where Savage is clearly the true main event. And it kind of makes you wonder what could have been if they had just gone with Savage, like earlier on when it was really the time for that. Because honestly, like, Savage is so the sentimental favorite of the crowd here. Like, it's not even close. And like, I'm not saying that it would have been reasonable to go with him instead of Hogan, because that's not reasonable, but it really makes you wonder what if, because if he had been the top star of this company, it would have been a lot easier to transition into this era.
Yeah. So we get a post-match interview with Mooney and Perfect and Flair. Perfect complains about Savage pulling the trunks. Heenan has abandoned his announcing post and run backstage. He says, I've got the tape. We're going to fix this. Flair cuts a great and kind of eerily calm promo where he's just like, I get it. I'm not upset. I understand. But, I'm going to get that title back. It's going to be mine again.
I just love that line. They're just like, there's a man walking around town claiming to be world's heavyweight champion, but he's not. I love that.
And he's fucking bleeding as this is going on.
Like, he just seems crazy, and I like that. I like crazy Flair.
I wish this had been an evolution of his character. What if this had been his new character, that he was insane?
That would have been so fitting for the time.
Yeah.
Instead, it'll be gone in a year.
Yeah. Then we get an interview with Savage. He just, I mean, he's cutting a promo as if he lost the match because he's just ranting and raving about how he's coming for Flair.
He doesn't give a fuck about that time. Should we read this promo because it's crazy?
Yeah, I'll be Gene, you be Savage.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you very much, Sean Mooney. With me right now is the new World Wrestling Federation champion, Macho Man Randy Savage, along with the First Lady, Miss Elizabeth. Now, some might say, Macho Man, that was a questionable victory. You heard them talking about the tights and so forth.
Why do I care? I don't care. That's okay. That's just a piece of what I wanted from you, Ric Flair. This is what makes you tick, Ric Flair. What makes you tick from the inside out, and I just took a piece of you, yeah. You haven't been beaten up properly, but this isn't all I want from you, Ric Flair. I want the whole Nature Boy. I want the whole Flair package. You call yourself the real WWF champion. Well, I guess I am now. And you won't. What you did to Elizabeth, you couldn't make me any madder than I was before I went into the ring, but somehow you did it. Impossible, yeah. Now I'm going to get the rest of him. If I get him in a street parking lot, doesn't matter to me, yeah. I'll do anything to win, and if I didn't prove it, I'll prove it next time, oh yeah. And then he turns around to Liz and just goes, and like hands her the title and just says like, this is your, oh wait, no, he says, let's go.
Wait a minute, if I may.
Yeah, if you may what?
Elizabeth, after what happened here at WrestleMania, the fact that Randy defeated Ric Flair for the WWF title, in light of all the allegations and everything that's been going on in the past couple of months, do you feel at this time that you have been at all vindicated?
Then Savage turns to Elizabeth, thrusts the title at her, and says, wait a minute, this is yours. Take it and go. And then Savage rips his shirt off like Hulk Hogan, is yours, Ric Flair. You can have all of me next time. Mr. Perfect, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm out of here. Ooh, yeah. Just a piece.
All right. Thank you very much. Macho Man Randy Savage. We're in Indianapolis. We're in the Hoosier Dome. This is WrestleMania 8.
That is a crazy person promo.
Yeah, that's the promo after he got beat, not after he won the belt.
Like, if it weren't for the fact he was wearing the title the whole time, you would absolutely think that he had lost that match. He's obsessed. Like, he won the title, and he's just like, this is an afterthought. Who cares? I still want to beat your ass. That's not how feuds work.
Yeah, this is where Vince's instinct to always have the babyface go over harmed him. Like, there's no question Flair should have kept the belt.
No question at all.
Yeah. Imagine how hot SummerSlam would have been if it's Savage finally getting the belt from Flair.
Oh, God, yes. In like a cage match, so like Perfect can't interfere or something. Like, that's the match.
Next up, we've got the WrestleMania debut of Native American Tatanka as he takes on Rick the Model Martel.
Okay,
this doesn't seem like the real Tatanka. He's in long tights.
It's very weird. And they have like a whole like a group of actual Native Americans in the ring, but they like don't reference them at all, and they don't perform. They're just kind of there.
They're just a bunch of
and then they wander
workers.
off. Yeah, they don't interact with Tatanka at all. They're just there. Now, as you guys may or may not remember, Tatanka was my favorite wrestler as a kid. That's a little bit questionable as I've grown up and realized how vaguely racist that whole thing was. But even so, like, Tatanka did have some really great moments and are really underrated. I look forward to covering them. This is not one of those.
Yeah, this is just a throwaway match. I mean, he gets the win over Martel wasn't super over by this point, but a reasonably big star of the 80s.
Yeah. This is just the point in the show where you're like, oh, so like all the new guys are beating all the people from the 80s. Got it.
Yeah. I mean, the best part of this match is Heenan and Monsoon fighting on commentary. Heenan gets back. He's all flustered, not a breath. Monsoon keeps needling him. Heenan is doing this hilarious stuff where he's like, I'm going to focus on the match. I am a broadcast journalist. I'm going to do my job. And Monsoon just keeps calling him a liar and winding Heenan up. Oh, Tricky Rick ran out of tricks, didn't he, Bobby? Yeah. Heenan challenges Monsoon to a fight at one point.
Oh, it's so good. And part of the joy in their partnership is the absolute knowledge that if they did have a fight, Gorilla Monsoon would eat him alive.
Gorilla Monsoon is so gigantic.
Yes. You kind of forget that when you just hear his voice all the time, but dude is huge.
Yeah. Tatanka goes over here in 4 minutes with a crossbody. I mean, this is the death spot after that last match.
This is kind of the moment in the show, too, where I realized, like, this is supposed to be a show where old guys put over new guys, right? Like, that seems to be the premise.
Yeah.
Well, despite the fact that, like, as Bruce Pritchard will tell you, like, the whole point is to beat them with their finish, nobody on this show loses to somebody else's finish, except for The Undertaker winning with the tombstone. Like, it's, even though there's not as many, like, DQs as there were, like, WrestleMania 4, it's still a ton of, like, you can beat me with a roll-up, or you can beat me with this weird move
Cheap
that's
bets.
not your finish. It's very strange.
So in the next match, we've got Money Inc. defending the World Tag Team Championship against the Natural Disasters. This feels completely thrown together. The Disasters have suddenly turned face. Money Inc. are suddenly the tag champions. And we get this match, which just dies a death in front of this crowd.
Sure does.
I think the only highlight is as DiBiase is making his entrance, some dude in the crowd on camera flashes like 6 $1 bills and apparently thinks he looks cool doing it.
He has them all splayed out, and he's like fanning himself with them, like, yeah, look at
oh,
all the
yeah.
money.
Making it rain with $5.
Hey, that's big money in Indiana.
Yeah. Heenan rightfully buries this guy.
Oh, God, yes.
I'll bring up a note I found in the Wrestling Observer from February that DiBiase and Shawn Michaels were going to form a tag team. How amazing would that have been?
Oh, my God. Is this the birth of the idea for the Ringmaster gimmick?
It seems like
having
that gimmick
Shawn
had
Michaels
been
do
around
that?
forever, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like, it's just one of those ones that they tried to put on everybody. God, if they had saddled Shawn Michaels with that, like, it would have been a great tag team, but Shawn really needed to fly solo.
That tag team should have been called Dirty Sexy Money.
Dirty, sexy money. God, yes. Never mind. That should have happened.
The Disasters dominate. Money Inc. consider walking out, but they don't. DiBiase pulls the rope down on Typhoon. That allows Money Inc. to take advantage, but almost immediately Typhoon turns the tide, hits a splash on IRS. Earthquake is going to hit the sit-down splash, but Money Inc. Escape when Jimmy Hart pulls IRS out of the ring. The champs grab their belts and walk away. They get counted out. I do love the walkout as a heel finish.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it's in a match like this where the stakes aren't super high. This isn't a super hot match. It just puts some heat on these characters and makes a lot of sense and protects the baby faces. What's really frustrating about this, and I've always found this frustrating, is the Gorilla's like, oh, this is going to cost them their share of the purse. I really hate when they bring up the purse like that's a concept that we always just accept about wrestling matches.
I mean, well, I like referencing the purse. I like the idea that the winners go into the pay window.
But like, either always reference it or never reference it. Don't be like, oh, hey, he was going to make the winner share of the purse, but I guess not. He's the $1 million man. He doesn't give a fuck about the purse anyway.
Yeah, I don't think he cares about his payoff.
But that could have been like a cool character, as being like, well, you guys care about winning the purse. I'm the $1 million man. I'm going to walk out of every match. Who cares?
We go backstage for an interview with Brutus Beefcake, who just kisses Hogan's ass. Fuck Brutus Beefcake.
At least it's on camera now, and it's not just Brutus Beefcake in a semi-main event for no reason. Excuse me.
Next up, we've got one of the biggest throwaway matches in WrestleMania history as Skinner takes on Owen Hart. What are your thoughts on Skinner?
What thoughts are there to even have on Skinner? I mean...
Is he one of the worst wrestlers of all time?
Yes. He's one of the worst gimmicks of all time. He's one of the worst wrestlers of all time. And like I did not realize that he was in the company this early. I guess I always kind of considered him to be part of that later jobber period where everyone had a weird job.
He was a
This
trailblazer in that sense.
Yeah, he was. It's very weird to have a Crocodile Dundee ripoff on this show.
Yeah.
It's very, very weird.
Skinner hits a reverse DDT, but Owen kicks out. Owen gets thrown over the top rope. He skins the cat back in, and he gets an Oklahoma roll for the win. That's the whole match. It's a minute long.
It's like literally King Kong Bundy has matches longer than this.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
I think the show was running long. A British Bulldog versus Berserker match had also been announced, but didn't make it on the show. I think they were just running out of time.
I mean, that makes sense, though. I don't really know where it's running long because there's only this doesn't seem as padded with random bullshit as all the other shows do. Like, there's only like 9 or 10 matches on this whole show.
No, so I guess it was the Flair Savage stuff. That's the only thing that was long.
But it doesn't even really. It goes like 18 minutes. It doesn't go like 25. Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also just making sure they have enough time for what's going to happen at the end of the show.
Yeah. Maybe we could have cut the main event down to 5 minutes for that. That would
have been perfect.
Yes.
Mean Gene interviews Sid, who now has Harvey Whippleman as his manager. I love Harvey Whippleman as a manager because he's so tiny and makes his guys look so gigantic.
I agree with that. I'd never really liked his promos per se, but I do love him standing next to Sid because Sid looks like he's going to just devour him at any moment.
This is a great Sid promo. You know, he's just like, I don't give a damn about Hulkamania. You know, just he promises he's going to be the man who ends Hulkamania, and you believe him.
Sid, okay, look. We've been upfront with you guys about how much we love Sid. So I think it's okay that we can just kind of like load effusive praise on him, and that's you guys just understand what the deal is here. He looks incredible.
Oh, he looks so big.
And he's so threatening and aggressive, and like he just has this it quality to him that other monsters like him just never had. Like he's dripping with both sweat and charisma. And like,
yeah.
I very seriously believe he should have won this match because if he wins with the heat and like the momentum,
he would have been liquid hot.
See, that's the thing. Like, there weren't a lot of opportunities for someone to actually beat Hogan and get his heat, and I think this is that opportunity. Like, Sid pins Hogan clean with a power bomb. Fuck.
Oh my god! Can you imagine?
Like, he's the new guy.
Yeah, we'll get to the finish here. The finish here is interesting. We'll get there in a second. They re-show the Hogan Vince interview, and we don't get a Hulk Hogan backstage interview, which seems like a big omission.
I was really sorry about that, and maybe that's because like he just didn't feel like it. If this is supposed to be his like retirement match, maybe he didn't feel like doing like a cartoony promo, but I really feel like we missed out on getting that awesome Hulk Hogan this doesn't make any fucking sense promo here. That era is dead and it's very sad.
And there's never another Hulk Hogan backstage promo because he doesn't get one the next year either.
Well, doesn't he get one where he's got the black eye with Brutus?
No, I don't think so.
Huh, maybe I'm misremembering that. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's never the same.
So we've got our main event. Sid Justice against Hulk Hogan. This is what the world has come to. Harvey Whippleman insists on doing the introduction for Sid. Sid comes down the aisle. He is fucking dripping in sweat or water or whatever. He looks gigantic and terrifying. They shoot him from the ground up, and he looks like an absolute mountain of a man coming down the aisle.
It's one of those very rare times where you can see people in the front row. Like normally the people in the front row are reaching out to whoever, heels, faces, whatever. And they're not reaching out to Sid. They're like scared. Like they don't want to touch him. Like that is heat.
I guarantee kids were afraid of him.
I would have been. I'm afraid of him now. Every time he looks in the camera, I'm like, Buck, don't look at me, Sid.
Genuinely scary guy.
he has a quality where he might actually murder you. And
Yeah.
like that's only further reinforced by what we actually know about his real life.
Ooh, I love the way they shoot this Hogan entrance where he comes through the curtain, the camera's like all the way down the ramp, and the cameraman like sprints up the ramp to get right in his face.
The sweep up, yes. The classic Hogan sweep the floor up to his face move, except he does it all the way down the aisle. This is actually, I think, maybe the last one of these too on a WrestleMania, which I'm always going to miss that because I think I mentioned all the way back in one of the first shows that we did. That's one of the great arts of camera work in wrestling is what they used to do with Hogan. Just like panning through all the outstretched hands of people reaching for Hogan and then panning up so he looks like the biggest person in the world to get his big, huge smile. Like that's one of the great camera work moves anyone's ever done.
And this is where we get the birth of the wow, I can't believe this ovation Hulk Hogan face that he would master in the years to come.
Like, oh my goodness, are they cheering for little old me?
Oh my God, can you believe this, guys? Yeah, this is the look he would wear permanently from 2002 on.
Though I think in that case, it was at least somewhat genuine. Like, are you guys
'cause some of those
seriously popping this hard?
ovations were insane. Yeah. Yeah. I think we've referenced it before, but the one in Montreal where it went all the way through the commercial break was crazy.
And like after like 5 minutes of it still going, Hulk's like completely abandoned the idea of cutting his promo. And he's just like, what the fuck, guys? What are we doing?
Not gonna happen. Yeah. He gets a good ovation here, but it's not
that.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, he's cooled off a lot.
He's arguably not even the top babyface on this show.
I think Savage was hotter,
and that's crazy.
I mean, even I think Piper was comparable too.
Yeah, it's like Roman Reigns. Like it gets to a point where it's so stale that you just can't bring yourself to care anymore.
As soon as Hogan gets in the ring, Sid jumps him, but Hogan fires up and he knocks Sid out to the floor. They then redo the same spot again, and Sid again gets knocked out to the floor. Sid makes a comeback and slams Hogan. Tons of boos. Now Sid knocks Hogan to the floor and hits him with Whippleman's loaded medical bag. This match just drags and drags after this. Like, I barely have any notes because I think it was just like one long bear hug and chin lock.
This should have been a 5-minute match.
That was all they had. How long did it go?
I mean, I think 10, but like, I'm looking it up now.
12. It felt like a lot long. It felt like 25.
This could have been like Goldberg Lesnar, like something like that. Or maybe not exactly like that since they have all this gaga to work out at the end. But like, man, there's nothing here wrestling-wise. Hogan's not going to pull a good match out of Sid, especially when Sid can't look vulnerable for even 1 second. And Hogan is not who he was when
I feel like
carried Warrior.
1986 Hogan could have had a pretty good match here. But yeah, 1992 Hogan's not going to be able to do it.
He's just not bumping the same as he used to. Hogan's still wrestling like 80s style matches. Sid's doing squash match Sid. Like it doesn't work. Like it only works if Sid just flat beats him, which of course it was never going to happen.
Yeah. The only real highlight here is Hogan taking the power bomb, which just you can't you see it and it just doesn't look right.
Right. Like Hogan never took moves even slightly like that. Like Hogan didn't really leave his feet. To like see him get up for that was like, wow.
Yeah. That gets 1, 2, kick out. Hogan hulks up. Body slam, leg drop, 1, 2, Sid kicks out. Now this is an infamous moment, and some have speculated that like Sid went into business for himself and shot on Hogan and kicked out of his leg drop. That is not correct. He was not supposed to kick out of the leg drop. Papa Shango was supposed to break up the pin, but they screwed up the timing of the interference, and it took him forever to get down to the ring.
Now, and here's the thing too. I seriously doubt that Sid made the decision to kick out. I'm sure somebody told him to. Whether it was the ref, whether it was Hogan himself, just seeing that the finish had gotten fucked.
But it's the right thing to do anyway.
Right, he's got to kick out. You got to protect him. That's the whole idea.
Yeah, it is interesting
you're building
that
to Sid.
They weren't going to have Hogan pin him here.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to get to 2 main events off of this match. Like, they're moving these two away from each other, and they want to go around the house show loop until SummerSlam with Sid Warrior and Hogan Papa Shango. Like, that's the plan, right?
Is that I think they knew Hogan was going away. Coming out of this, they did Sid. They were going to finally suspend Sid for not taking his drug tests, but they decided let's have him do the European tour because they didn't want to have him not be on all those cards. So they did him against Undertaker on the European tour, and then they had the infamous Warrior Papa Shango feud. And then they were going to suspend Sid after the European tour, but he just quit instead. It was softball season.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's what it seemed like the plan was after this, but I guess you're probably right. Like, that's not where it wound up going.
And I think eventually they were probably going to do Warrior against Sid.
And then that's probably where they were going for SummerSlam. Like, Warrior versus Sid, Shango versus Hogan, if he was back by then. Like, that just makes sense. But it's all fucked up here.
Yeah. God, the shot of Shango jogging down the ramp. He's so slow.
And this is the debut of Charles Wright, who will be at many, many more of these WrestleManias.
Never in any prominent role. God. What do you think of this Papa Shango character? I actually think it's really cool. I'm surprised this didn't get over.
I liked it a lot when I was a kid. Like, it didn't, like, I just like the idea of like a big mystery heel like that. Like, there's always room for that. It seemed inevitable that he would feud with The Undertaker because their characters just kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. And I regretted thinking that when I eventually saw that actual feud.
Yeah. We would instead get The Undertaker against the Extreme Fighting Machine, SummerSlam 95.
Gross.
Yeah. As always, Undertaker made sure I guess him and Charles Wright probably weren't actually friends yet.
Yeah, but eventually they would be. The Bone
They both liked strip clubs.
That is one of my favorite things about wrestling, basically ever, was Undertaker being on the road and being like, I don't have any friends. Charles, come back. Stop bodyguarding at that strip club and come work. Vince, find him a character.
Okay. We'll make him the Extreme Fighting Machine, which I thought was a great gimmick too.
Charles Wright's had a lot of great gimmicks.
Yeah, and only the Godfather got over.
Yeah. It's a mystery that the Good Father didn't get over.
So, after a year, Shango gets to the ring, and he and Sid attack Hogan. They had already called for the bell. After Sid kicked out, Whippleman jumped up on the apron, and Hogan dragged him in. The referee just threw the match out, which, again, was also the right call. Let's just wrap this clusterfuck up.
Agreed. And then a very controversial moment in WrestleMania history happens when the Ultimate Warrior's music hits and he makes a shocking return. Or is it an imposter?
Why did people think the Warrior had died? Because his physique was suddenly nowhere near as impressive?
Well, his hair looked different. He was doing like the big coats and stuff like he had been doing the year before, but like his whole look was just vaguely different. And I think what it was is his hair was just dry instead of wet for a change.
So obviously he had died and been replaced with an imposter.
Yeah, I don't know how you get there. Like you could be like, oh, I guess a new person's portraying the Ultimate Warrior. Okay, that's fine. But I don't know how you get to the Ultimate Warrior died. And rather than admit it, he replaced him with a new guy named Jeff. No, no, they didn't.
Yeah. This Warrior return is an incredible moment and a total shock.
Yes.
I just completely out of nowhere, he's back. He has not been seen since SummerSlam 91 when he chased the Triangle of Terror backstage with a chair, ran back through the curtain, and presumably just kept right on running for months and months.
He ran all the way to Indianapolis.
Yeah, ran back through the curtain here, and now he's back. They think they're getting him back for a big run. I think they were going to get the title to him. Doesn't end up happening, as we covered in our Survivor Series 92 episode, as he would get fired in the fall for getting HGH shipments.
It's a shame that Sid and Warrior are who they are, because
yes, it is.
It seems like this could be a moment where things change for the better for them. Like Warrior makes a big comeback. It's awesome. Sid is super hot. It's kind of the point where Hogan's going to kind of, pass the torch and leave TV for a while. Like, it seems like a good opportunity for future business. Unfortunately, they're both gone immediately. And it's like, well, Now we got nothing.
Yeah. And we get the new generation instead, which, I mean, I have some fond memories of, but overall a very rough time for the company.
Very, very rough time.
But yeah, I mean, Warrior, it's a cool moment because his music starts to play for, a good 15 seconds before he actually comes out. So the anticipation really builds, and then he just sprints into the ring, fires up with the clotheslines. Crowd is going crazy. Clothesline sends Shango to the floor. Sid hits Warrior with a chair, but Hogan gets the chair away and runs Sid off. And Hogan and Warrior celebrate together as the show goes off the air. Like we said, feels like it should be a big moment for the Warrior, but this run ends up kind of going nowhere.
I must piss Hogan off to this day that the guy who he gave the real rub to wound up being the Warrior.
Yeah.
Because their careers were going to be inexorably linked. Hogan would have been able to live off of the Warrior for years after that, just being friends on TV and stuff like that, where he could have been off TV and just be there to support the Warrior. That was his retirement plan, was the guy he put over he could always associate with. And instead, that guy fucking fails. That must piss him off.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is a really good show.
I like it. I really do. I can't remember if I said it on the podcast or if I said to you beforehand, but it really feels like somebody sobered up and booked this show after being completely off their ass for the first 7.
Yeah.
Everything, despite the fact all the changes that went into the show, everything makes sense. There's only 9 or 10 matches instead of 50. The wrestling is much, much better. Yeah. It just makes sense more.
Yeah. Young guys are getting put over.
It's exactly the way you're supposed to do it.
I think the problem is what did they leave themselves with coming out of it? And some of this is not really their fault. Can't do anything about Jake quitting. Can't do anything about Sid being an unreliable asshole. Can't do anything about Hogan. Kind of reading the tea leaves that business is going downhill and wanting to disassociate himself from it. So, I mean, coming out of this, they've got Flair chasing Savage for the title, which is not a cult program, and the absolutely historically terrible feud between Warrior and Papa Shango.
Yes, the one where he vomits black stuff.
Yes, the infamous vomiting segment. That's what happens when you let Warrior write TV for you.
And then, okay, so the following WrestleMania after this is historically garbage, maybe the worst one ever. That was why we covered it first, because I'm the only one on the planet Earth who actually likes it. But if they don't find Yokozuna in the next year, how fucked are they?
Yeah, you try to imagine WrestleMania 9 without Yokozuna, and it's rough. Well, the thing is, what they should have done is just keep Randy Savage on top instead of deciding he's too I think what happened is that his program with Flair didn't draw because it was cold to have Flair chasing him, and that led Vince to decide he's too old, he can't draw anymore, we have to retire him.
Is this so? That should that have been Savage versus Brett?
Yeah, definitely, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Or Brett against Hogan, but Hogan wasn't going to put Brett over.
Shit, Hogan won't even let himself not pin a guy Brett can't pin.
How much do you think it bothers Hogan that he never got his win back from Yokozuna?
I feel like somewhere deep in the recesses of his Tampa Bay home, Hulk Hogan has a notebook that lists every loss he's ever taken in his career, and he scratched out all the ones that he got back. And I think it might be very possible that Yokozuna is the only one that isn't scratched out, and it drives him insane.
Yeah. These are the names he repeats to himself before he goes to sleep at night.
He goes to the cemetery and leg drops Yokozuna's grave.
Oh, God. There is a story that he tried to get WCW to bring in. I mean, he got them to bring in the Warrior, but he also tried to get them to bring in Yokozuna. And it was like, yeah, Terry, we all know what you're after here. we get it.
Just have him trip fall and I'll pin him in 3. It's fine. We'll do it on Thunder.
Oh, he's keeping that torch, brother.
Oh, my God.
So that wraps up WrestleMania 8. I think one of the more underrated WrestleManias. Not really one that I think people think about, but I think it's certainly one of the. I mean, of the first 8 we've done, I think it's one of the better ones.
Oh God, yes. And I'm actually happy to finally be in the era where matches are consistently good, even if it also is the era where stars aren't really a thing anymore. But I'm really excited. Like next week, we're going to do WrestleMania 10. And like, I can't wait to cover WrestleMania 10.
Yeah, WrestleMania 10 is like a whole nother world. So like we mentioned, we already did WrestleMania 9. That was a long time ago. We'll repost that in the feed so people can re-listen to the pilot episode of our podcast and keep the chronology proper. But yeah, our next new episode will be WrestleMania 10 with all sorts of great things. 2 absolute classic all-time matches.
Man, we got Bret Owen. We got the ladder match. We got, oh, God.
Yeah, we've got the derailment of the Lex Express.
That's exciting. How hilariously that goes. We can talk all about it.
Yeah, all kinds of great stuff to cover next week with WrestleMania 10.
Oh, God, yeah. It's going to be great.